Oh yes, I can feel that. If you watch the previous two videos, you'll see that I bought this project bike and I got, I think, a bit of a bargain because it's got some really good parts. I did promise that I would say how much I paid for the bike. I actually got it on an eBay auction for £1,030. Now, in the comments where people have said what they thought I paid, the lowest one was some guy in America, I think, spring-loaded. I wish we could get bikes in the UK for the prices you do in the States. But anyway, Tom Mack had it dead on the nose. I think that might be an indication of his research skills as much as anything else. Other people put on anywhere between £1,275 up to about £1,700, all of which they said would have still been a very good price, and I agree with them. So thanks for adding in the comments, you know, people such as Ben, Alan, Phil, Chris and Matt Tag, who always seems to put something on. Thanks very much. Did get the engine running and running on fuel as well, so that's always a good sign. But there were a couple of problems. One was it was leaking oil at the front and it seemed to have a bit of an exhaust blow. The other one was I'm still not sure about whether I can select gears with it or not. Now my intention is to strip this bike down quite a way because I've got to refinish the frame and I want to go through all of the different parts, recommission them, clean them, put them back together and then come up with my own cosmetic scheme for this bike, which is still up for grabs. Me and my son have different views on how it should look. I'm sure he'll win, but don't tell him at this point. Before I actually take the engine out, what I want to do is some tests to make sure I've got a few ideas of where I'm looking. I do think it's the head gasket and it might not be affecting compression, but I'm going to compression test it. I'm also going to take off the gear change linkage, see if I can get it to change gear without that linkage on. If not, I'll perhaps take the clutch out and have a look at the clutch because I think it's one or the other of those things. I don't think, at the end of the day, Honda gearboxes are reasonably robust, so I think it's either the gear change mechanism or the clutch that's causing me a problem. So this video is looking at those two things before I actually strip it completely out. Let's see where we get to. If you watch the previous two videos in this series, you'll see I was outside in a t-shirt and it was nice and warm and sunny. And it looks quite sunny through the window today, but actually it's been snowing and hailstoning and it's absolutely bitter cold. Thank God I'm in the workshop. Whenever you're doing work on a lift, you do need to make sure that the bike is secured properly and keep that in the forefront of your mind. You do not want the bike falling on you. It's not so bad if it falls against your leg from the floor, but if it falls on top of you from 4 foot in the air, it's going to hurt. Well, that's interesting. I did actually think it was running on all 4 cylinders, but looking at the plugs, I can see that 4 and 3 were running very rich. Number 2, that doesn't look like it was running, to be honest. And number 1, that probably, you know, looks like it was running, but not a lot. So, interesting. I'll do a compression test now and see what that tells me. A little bit of tape round helps it to come back out so it doesn't just unscrew itself. Cylinder 1. Showing me about 80. On to cylinder 2. Changed over the connector and here we go. Cylinder 2, 70. On to cylinder 3. I'd say 80. And finally, number 4. Well, that got to nearly 100. 100 or more is really what you're looking for. If you look at my previous CB750 where I did a compression test, I got 130 on each of the cylinders and I don't think I'd actually run it at that point. So this one's looking like I'm going to have to consider what I'm going to do about the head. I've put a bit of oil into cylinder 1 just to see if it makes an improvement on the pressure. It got it up to about nearly 110. Sort of implies it might be the rings. Cylinder compressions are a bit on the low side, and the one that I tried with a bit of oiling went up quite a bit, which surprised me, to be honest. But thinking it's got a new head gasket on, I thought maybe it had a top end rebuild and it was just an unfortunate failure. I'm definitely having this engine out and I'll have the top end off, so it's only told me a little bit more than I already was thinking I'd have to do. Next thing I need to have a look at is the gear change. See if I can find gears in there before I actually do take the engine out. Now I'll have a look at the gear change. It's got rear sets on and it does feel like it will select the gears. However, when I spin the rear wheel round, it doesn't turn the engine over. So I think it's either the rear sets are not allowing it to click into gear properly, or more likely it's something with the clutch. So I'll have a look at the clutch first. The clutch adjusts on this flat-headed bit in the middle, and that looks suspiciously far in. So what I'm going to do is release it out and adjust it like it should be properly and see if that makes any difference. To adjust the clutch, what you have to do is release off this lock nut, and I'm going to take this quite a long way out and then you go until you feel some resistance. I feel resistance there. You can go past that, so you've got to be cautious, and it may be what the problem was. So just come back out again and you go in till you feel resistance. And I get to it just there. What it is that screw's touching the end of the push rod that actuates the clutch. So once you get that resistance, you back it off a quarter of a turn, then you tighten the lock nut back up. Now if you look, you can see this is a long way out compared to where it was. I'm wondering if this is actually going to make a, well, I think it will make a major difference now. Now I've adjusted the clutch, what I'll do is I'll just make sure it goes into gear. That should be first, and I cannot turn the engine over. Pull in the clutch, and yes, I can get it to move. Let out the clutch. Looks to me like it was clutch adjustment that was the problem all along. So let's see if I can get the other gears. So, back into neutral. That'd be second. That'd be third. That'd be fourth. And I'm pretty confident now that'd be fifth. Let's see if I can turn the engine over in fifth. Oh yes, I can feel that. Back to neutral. With the two things that I wanted to look at today, there's bad news and there's good news. Bad news is I definitely think I'm going to have the cylinder head off. I thought that was going to be the case anyway, so I was really expecting it. The compressions were low on, on all of them, and particularly low on a couple. So I think I really do want to have a look on there. Not to worry, get the engine out. I can then get the frame away for getting it painted or powder coated. So that's not so bad. The good news is it was just clutch adjustment that was stopping the gears working properly, it would appear. And could be one of two things. One, person who had it before might have adjusted the clutch so it was all the way in and backed it off a quarter. And that meant the clutch was always being held apart so it would never catch. Or it might be that they was thinking, I'm going to leave this for 5 years. I'll screw the clutch all the way in so that the plates are not bound together so they won't stick. It's a thought. I mean, certainly I've usually come across bikes that have been left for a long while with sticky clutches. At least that's not got this one. Anyway, if you want to see what happens next with this bike, you probably better subscribe and maybe hit the notification bell.